With GW giving us the Grotmas calendar and all the factions getting their new detachments every single day, I decided to talk about one of my favorite armies, and that is the Tau and their codex detachment. And spoiler alert, I hate it. Now, hold on. Okay, this isn't some rage bait. Okay, like we don't do that here. We don't rage bait here. And before people in the comments come after me and yell at me, telling me to get good, loser, and skill issue, and you're a bum. The codex has been out for about 9 months now. And I've had a lot of time to really sit and think about this. And I've just come to the conclusion that when it comes to this book, I just really don't like it. First of all, you only get 4 detachments with the book. Now, it's a lovely book. It's got great art, but we're only looking at 4 detachments. Same price as the other books, but you only get 4 rules here. Now, as another example with the Necrons, as of today, Necrons have 7 different detachments that you can use for that army. 7 compared to the Tau's 4. And when you think about it, we already had the Kauyon index. So we really only got 3 new detachments with the Tau book. So that in itself is not a great start. Now, when we look at the detachments, let's take Mont'ka, for example. Okay. Now, Mont'ka, you get assault and lethal hits for the first 3 rounds, which is, that's great. Assault lethal hits. Why wouldn't you want that for the first 3 rounds? It sounds great, except for the fact that no opponent worth their salt is going to give you any viable targets for that first turn, for that first round. So your rule is mostly used for turns 2 and 3. So you've only got an army rule for essentially 2 turns. So your Mont'ka is wasted basically because no one's going to give you anything on the first round. You don't get anything via the rule book for rounds 4 and 5, leaving you turns 2 and 3 to try to win you the entire game and do the most damage. And just based on the way your opponent's going to play, is that a viable strategy? It's certainly not a fun one, at least not in my experience, because you have to put yourself out there to make use of your army rule. And currently, right now, according to Goonhammer, so I'm not making this stuff up. According to Goonhammer, the Mont'ka detachment has a 43% win rate as far as tournament play is concerned. And for the Tau, that is the lowest win rate for this army in that detachment. And that is no surprise because you essentially have 2 turns to use your army rule, and then you got nothing. You got nothing. So that is the lowest win rate Mont'ka. Now Kauyon has the next detachment, Kauyon. Kauyon has the same issue, but it's in reverse. Now you get your army rule turns 3 through 5. And with this one, you get sustained hits 1 and 2, depending on your greater good ability. And we're going to talk about the greater good here in just a minute. But with Kauyon, you get nothing for turns 1 and 2, rounds 1 and 2. So, and when you think about it, when you play the games, how many games actually go to round 5 where you play the whole thing out? The games, a lot of times, games are decided, or you kind of talk it out. A lot of times you don't really play round 5. So again, we're looking at the Kauyon rule where you're not going to get it 1 and 2. You're probably not going to use it for turn 5. So we're looking at 2 rounds where you actually get to use your army rule. And that's just not a fun mechanic for the army. And again, you get to round 5, the game is basically over. So it really doesn't mean anything to have Kauyon in turn 5, at least for a lot of games that I play, and probably for a lot of games that you play as well. So next up, we're looking at the Kroot hunting pack. Now, there may be Tau players out there, I'm sure there are Tau players out there that bought this faction specifically because they love Kroot. I'm sure you guys exist. You are valid. Okay, don't let me tell you any different. But I am not that player. I got Tau because they're robots, and I want to see the robots shoot their devastating weapons. I don't care about Kroot whatsoever. Kroot are cool. You love Kroot, good for you. But I didn't get into Tau because of the chicken men. I got into Tau because of the fish men. Okay, I couldn't resist. On a serious note, I love Tau because they pilot machines, not because of the hunting pack. With that said, the Kroot was not a selling point to me whatsoever when it came to the Tau, and coincidentally, even though I don't care about the Kroot, they probably have the best rules for this faction. So the Kroot hunting pack comes with a +1 to hit and a +1 to wound if that target of the attack is below half strength. And on top of that, you get a 6-up and 5-up invulnerable save for melee and ranged weapon attacks, respectively. And the cool thing about this is they get that rule the entire game. Rounds 1 through 5, they get that rule. And that's a huge deal. That makes it fun. Must be nice to get your rule for the whole game. And coincidentally or not, the Kroot hunting pack has the highest win rate at 53% wins for this faction. Again, this is according to Goonhammer. So go figure, when you get to use your rule all game, you win more games. So who would have thought? So the backbone of the Tau Codex right now are the Kroot detachment, and that kind of makes me sad. But we have one more detachment to talk about, and that is Retaliation. So in Retaliation, you get to improve the strength of your ranged attacks by 1 if you're within 12 inches of an enemy, and you get to improve the strength and AP of that attack by 1 if you're within 6 inches of the enemy. And you get to use this rule all game. Okay, now that sounds all mighty fine and good. You get to use your rule the whole game. You get to be in your suits all game. That is great. Sounds like a great rule on the surface. But this is Tau, so there's a but here. But in order to get the full effect of that rule, you have to be within 6 inches of the enemy to get that +1 to your strength and AP. And for those who don't know, Tau are notoriously terrible in melee. Notoriously terrible in melee. Now, that said, your battle suits can shoot into combat, okay, which is good. But as a Tau player, I don't want to be in combat ever. That's just not a place I want to be. If I run into melee armies like World Eaters, which is a very popular army, Space Wolves, which is a popular army, Blood Angels, which is a popular army, etc., these melee armies that want me to get into them, I'm just giving up my advantage as a ranged faction, having to get close to use my army rule. So, and if I get close to World Eaters and Space Wolves and things like that, I'm toast. So that's not something that I'm looking to do, but I'm forced to do because of my rule set. And again, that's just not very fun. So in having to give up my ranged advantage to use my army rule, I feel like my rule is actually working against me in this instance. And speaking of your rules working against you, let's talk about the greater good. So, the greater good. The greater good is your army-wide rule, okay, that essentially, without getting bogged down into all the verbiage, essentially what it does is it gives you a +1 to your ballistic skill as long as you are using your spotted unit to shoot your target, okay? +1 ballistic skill is great because Tau are typically hitting on 4s, so hitting on 3s is nice. Now, but of course, there's a big caveat with this. If you're not shooting your spotted target, you are penalized at a -1 to your ballistic skill. So now you're hitting on 5s instead of 4s just because you want to split fire. So that makes splitting fire in this army useless because now you're hitting on 5s, and if you're shooting on 5s, you might as well be shooting into the sky because good luck trying to take something out hitting on 5s. So you're locked in to whatever target you're spotting for, and Tau have all these guns, which is part of the appeal of the army, but you're penalized for actually using the different guns that you have to shoot the targets. So you become this very specialized unit just so you can stay within the rules of the greater good, constantly just shooting yourself in the foot because you can't shoot multiple targets. And again, as a Tau player, that's not fun. To have your rules actually work against you more than anything. Now I can see if you shoot your spotted unit, you get the +1 to your ballistic skill, but if you shoot any other unit, you don't get that bonus. That sounds great, but to have a penalty for split firing sounds just very harsh for really no reason whatsoever. So a lot of the rules that is in this codex here is fighting against you as far as playing this army. So those are my major gripes with the Tau codex, okay? And with all that said, they have an overall win percentage of 47%, okay? 47% win rate. That's right in line with GW's little sweet spot that they like to have armies in. And that's fine, but some of the rules in this codex just leaves you scratching your head as to why it's written like this. Rules where you only get a couple turns to use them, rules that penalize you if you don't do it a specific way, an entire detachment of Kroot in a Tau army when you only have 3 other detachments to use. So just a lot of head scratching decisions when it comes to this Tau codex. Because there are only 4 detachments, I just feel like I'm hitting a wall as far as my options are with this army. Now, the top players in the world, the top players that play this game, they are always gonna figure out how to maximize everything. That's what they do. So no matter what GW throws at them, no matter what the rules are, they find a way to maximize it and do well with it, and good for them. But like, I'm just a guy that wants to have a little more variety in my rules, have a little more fun with my rules. I'm not looking to set the tournament world on fire. I just find the rules in the book to just be not fun, and it should be fun. And I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. I know people are going to be in the comments and just tell me to get good, practice more. I get all that, but I'm just a guy, and this is my opinion about one of the armies that I love. Now, I'm hopeful that old Grotmas this month will give us a Tau detachment that's going to be awesome, and that's mostly going to be something fun to play. It's not going to penalize you for simply existing. I'm hoping for Grotmas to come through for Tau. So now, what are your thoughts on the Tau Codex. Is it good? Is it bad? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you indifferent? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the tabletop.